My son Kim has been detained for the last 34 days. We do not know where he is. We do not know whether he's been tortured. We do not know whether they have killed him. And this is something that the USA cannot condone and cannot keep quiet. This has to move the world. I'm an 80-year-old father. Zelenskyy is the age of my son. He also has family. He also has 2 kids or 3, whatever. I don't want my son to leave my grandchildren without a father. As I said before, I beg you, Zelenskyy, I implore you, Biden, release my son. Deport him if you wish from Ukraine, but allow him to be free and to have me in my few years to come of my life to live in peace.
Oh my God. I didn't know. Have I been a fool all this time? Have I forgotten that Gonzalo Lira is someone's son? Have I been blinded by my self-righteous beliefs that Gonzalo is a threat to democracy and possibly the free world itself? Because he was spreading Russian propaganda? Oh man, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I should listen to this poor old man and try to learn from his wisdom and have some compassion for him and his son. Okay, let's hear what this poor old man has to say.
My son was an outspoken blogger against the government of Zelenskyy. Zelenskyy, my son was against your regime. He didn't like your politics. He wasn't in agreement with your politics. And you, Mr. Biden, you're making a fool of the USA, honestly. And we all know what you're doing in this war, Mr. Biden. You are behind this war.
What? What the
The Facts Hunter.
Zelenskyy is not a civilized world, but the USA is 100% behind that man who is a dictator in his country.
After Gonzalo Lira was arrested on May 1st, 2023, some people started making noise in the hopes that someone with some form of authority will give Gonzalo a chance and get him out of Ukrainian jail after he was incarcerated for breaking a new 2022 Ukrainian law drafted after the February 24, 2022 Russian invasion. The law in question is Draft Law number 5144, provides for amendments to the criminal and criminal procedure codes of Ukraine. According to the changes, the concept of collaborationism is introduced. Punishment is introduced for the public denial of Russian armed aggression against Ukraine, support of the actions of Russia, propaganda, and the transfer of material resources. Well, one of those people who made noise is Gonzalo's own father, Gonzalo Lira Valdez. As I was working on Chapter 2 of the Gonzalo Lira saga, and as I was doing some quick research, I found this video, which was released a week after I finished researching material for my main project. But now that I've seen it, I have to apologize, but I need to make a video about it.
Father, obviously desperate to get his son out of the situation that he is in. Mr. Gonzalo Lira Sr., welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here. Can you give us any update? What is happening with your son?
Thank you, Kim, for giving me the opportunity of being able to speak on behalf of my son. He was illegally detained. He's an American citizen living for many...
Okay, I'm gonna have to pause right there. No, sir. Gonzalo clearly broke the law and was justifiably detained. If we take a look at the law he's alleged to have broken, it is clearly stated punishment is introduced for 1. Public denial of Russian armed aggression against Ukraine, 2. Support for the actions of Russia, 3. Propaganda, and 4. The transfer of material resources. Gonzalo irrefutably has committed at least 2 of these offenses since the beginning of the invasion in 2022 and way into the 2014 start of the Russian-Ukrainian war. And it's all in tape. Here he is, publicly denying Russian armed aggression.
Right? But what are the Russians doing? Well, see, the Russians, they don't want to destroy Ukraine. No, they don't want to destroy it at all. What they want to do is they want to capture it intact. See? And they don't want to hurt the civilians. Why would they? From their point of view, if they harm civilians, they just create enemies. And so they want to capture Ukraine, change the political leadership of Ukraine, and install a political leadership that is sympathetic to Russia's security needs and is going to be a long-term ally. But they don't want to alienate the Ukrainian population. Because if they alienate the Ukrainian population, well, the Ukrainian population will eventually overthrow this puppet regime. And the Russians want to install a puppet regime. Let's not pretend otherwise. But they want to install a puppet regime whereby the Ukrainian citizens are more or less indifferent to it. They don't want to install a puppet regime after having made the lives of Ukrainians so miserable. So that's why they don't want to destroy Ukraine or harm the Ukrainian populace. They want to capture Ukraine intact, change the political leadership, and then let it go. Of course, because they don't want to manage Ukraine. They don't want it to be a burden on them. They don't want that long term. And so what are they doing? They are rapidly invading the whole country, and everybody concedes that they're moving very, very quickly. But they're not hitting any civilian infrastructure. They're only hitting military targets. And they are relentless in hitting the military targets, but always with a certain degree of caution. And I'll explain why in just a moment. But they're hitting military targets. They are avoiding civilian populations and civilian infrastructure. And when they go to a city or a destination, when they encounter any resistance from the Ukrainian army, any serious resistance, they stop and pull back. Because what are they doing? They are encircling. That's their whole strategy. And it's very simple. And if you look at a map, you'd realize it. What the Russians are doing is that whenever they go to a major city, like Kiev, like Kharkov, and soon enough they're going to be in Dnipro, when they get to those cities, they go up to those cities and they meet some resistance and then they pull back. And they allow their forces to start to surround it. That's the strategy they're employing in Kiev. That's the strategy that they're employing in Kharkov. They are encircling these cities. And once they've completely encircled them, what will they do? They'll wait. That's what they'll do. See, if you surround a city, all you have to do is just wait around. Eventually it'll fall, of course. And so the Russians are systematically surrounding all of the major cities. And whenever they come across a smaller town or village, they just advance and cover it and capture it and move on and continue with their advance. Whenever they meet any kind of serious resistance, they stop, pull back, and then encircle.
Here he is, publicly supporting the actions of Russia.
Because the people who are currently running Ukraine, the Zelenskyy regime, they're corrupt, they're evil, and I will show you why and explain why in some detail. And they are people that no one should support. And this is something that a lot of people are going to be bothered by, but it's the truth. That in many ways, Vladimir Putin's war of aggression on Ukraine, this invasion of Ukraine, which is what it is, let's not call it a police or special operation or any bullshit like that. It's an invasion, but in many ways it was justified. And that's a hard fact, and I'm going to explain why, but I try to be as even-handed as possible. I try to be as even-handed as possible, but at the end of the day, I make my judgments, and I call a spade a spade. No, I don't call a spade a spade. I call a spade a fucking shovel. And what Vladimir Putin did, has carried out over the past week, is an invasion, plain and simple. And this euphemism bullshit of that, it's an invasion. Is it wrong to invade a country? Well, it depends now, doesn't it? You know, everybody's saying that Russia's invasion of Ukraine was unjustified. That's a lie. That's an outright lie. It was very justified with a lot of really, really good reasons. And the shock for me is not that Russia invaded Ukraine. The shock for me is that Russia took its sweet time to invade Ukraine. If I had been the dictator of Russia, I would have invaded Ukraine years ago. I'm talking 5, 8, 10 years ago. I mean, the governments running Ukraine are so corrupt and so despotic and despicable that they should have been invaded ages ago. I'm not kidding. It's not the people, it's not the country, it's not the armed forces, it's the government. And especially this last one, which is it's a nightmare. And let me get to it. Okay, so that was sort of like...
And if you still have problems thinking that what he's saying can't be possibly be considered as Russian propaganda, here is Russian state TV using one of the videos we just viewed as talking point in support of the Russian invasion.
И вот мнение о том, что происходит сейчас на Украине, американского писателя, режиссера и кинопродюсера. Гонзало Лира Лопес оказался в Киеве накануне российской спецоперации и сознательно остался там. Независимый наблюдатель и мужественный человек, мнение которого идет вразрез с позицией его государства. Он фиксирует то, что происходит, и не боится об этом говорить.
Гонзало Лира Лопес. Он приехал на Украину в командировку перед началом нашей операции и не стал эвакуироваться.
Люди в США не понимают, что происходит. Они продолжают твердить, что Россия терпит неудачу. Это чрезвычайно странный комментарий. Американский способ ведения войны — это войти и все разрушить, уничтожить вышки сотовой связи, электросети, систему водоснабжения. Не сражаться, а все зачистить, уничтожить страну. США это делали в Афганистане, Ираке, Ливии, Сирии, или пытались это делать. Но русские не хотят разрушать Украину, они не хотят ее уничтожать. Они хотят сохранить страну в целости и сохранности и не хотят причинять вред гражданскому населению.
В отличие от
But we gotta keep moving, and let's continue listening to what Grandpa Lira has to say.
He's an American citizen living for many years in Ukraine due to the fact that he married a Ukrainian lady and has his two sons, a boy and a girl, living in Ukraine. My son was an outspoken blogger against the government of Zelenskyy. He never said anything bad about the Ukrainian people. In fact, he talked on many occasions as to how nice they were and how well he felt living in Ukraine. His only problem and beef was with the Ukrainian Zelenskyy regime and the fact that the information of the war, insofar as Gonzalo was concerned, was totally wrong. They were just lies. And he said this from the beginning of the war. As you showed part of his blogger videos, this was at the beginning of the Russia-Ukraine war, when Zelenskyy gave weapons, high-performance weapons, to people that had been in jail and freed them to have Ukrainians armed against potential Russians in the city of Kiev.
This is incorrect. Grandpa Lira here is spreading more misinformation just like his son did. And to prove my point, here's an article from Newsweek, released on February 28, just 4 days after the invasion started on 2022. Ukraine released prisoners with combat experience to help fight Russia. Now here is the important part. Down here it says, Ukrainians with real combat experience will be released with custody and will be able to compensate for their guilt in the hottest spots, Zelenskyy said. Okay, moving on.
Gonzalo was caught in Kiev at the time the war started. And after that, he went back to his hometown, Kharkiv. He reported, I saw a video when he was walking in the middle of shootouts in Kharkiv. He was reporting what he saw. He was reporting what he felt. Gonzalo never espoused for a coup d'etat, for having somebody killed. He always criticized the way the Zelenskyy regime was informing the war.
And this is more misinformation that Grandpa Lira is spreading. According to him, he saw a video of Gonzalo in the middle of a shootout reporting from the streets. This is completely wrong. Believe me, I've been doing research on this guy, Gonzalo Lira, of course, to a point where I'm getting tired of seeing his face every day. And believe me, I have not stumbled on a single video where he's reporting from the middle of a shootout. For example, this is one of the many places where one can find Gonzalo's archive videos. Some of them were uploaded by him and some by his own fans. Down here, we can see many of the videos that he uploaded at the beginning of the war. Most of them are from inside his hotel room, and the very few ones where he was reporting from the streets, there was no shootout similar to what Grandpa Lira is claiming to have seen. And here's another YouTube channel that archives Gonzalo Lira's videos. We can see several of these videos where Gonzalo is reporting straight from the streets. And I can tell you, none of these are videos of him reporting in the middle of a shootout. He never did. He never reported from the middle of the action. So I don't know what Grandpa Lira here is talking about. If any of you viewers have such video,
and I remember one video in the street, and you could hear bullets in Kharkiv. And he was out on the street reporting.
That Grandpa Lira is describing, where Gonzalo Lira is reporting in the middle of a shootout, please let me know. I would like to see that I'm being proven wrong. Otherwise, Grandpa Lira is making up shit, just like his son. But anyway, let's continue listening to what Grandpa Lira has to say.
And that is sanctioned by the human rights in the United Nations, signed last December 1948, that clearly says, insofar as freedom of speech, everyone has the right to freedom of expression. The right shall include freedom to hold opinions and to receive and impart information and ideas without interference by public authorities and regardless of the frontier.
And we gotta pause right there again. Grandpa Lira here is using the argument that Gonzalo has guaranteed freedom of speech by the UN. Okay, well, Grandpa Lira here seems to be a little bit confused. The United Nations cannot exercise their authority in Ukraine. Why? Well, the veto power of the permanent members of the Security Council makes any intervention by the UN in the Ukrainian crisis impossible. The permanent members of the Security Council are the United States, France, United Kingdom, China, and Russia. And since we're in the topic of the UN, we may as well correct Grandpa Lira in his argument that the US is the one to blame for the war in Ukraine and not Russia. How? By remembering the time when more than 100 diplomats walked out on Russia's foreign minister's speech at the UN Human Rights Council to protest against Ukrainian invasion. And we can look this on video. The UK and delegates from over 50 countries staged a walkout on the UN as Russian Defense Minister Sergei Lavrov addressed members. Mr. Lavrov was speaking to the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva. He accused the European Union of engaging in a Russophobic frenzy by supplying lethal weapons to Ukraine.
The people who are currently running Ukraine, the Zelenskyy regime, they're corrupt, they're evil, they are people that no one should support. Is it wrong to invade a country? Well, it depends now, doesn't it? Everybody's saying that Russia's invasion of Ukraine was unjustified. That's a lie. That's an outright lie. It was very justified with a lot of really, really good reasons. And the shock for me is not that Russia invaded Ukraine. The shock for me is that Russia took its sweet time to invade Ukraine. If I had been the dictator of Russia, I would have invaded Ukraine years ago. I'm talking 5, 8, 10 years ago.
UN has to take a very strong stance in defense of its own principles of the UN Charter, because what Russia did to Ukraine is an attack on the UN foundations, on the foundations of our cooperation. It's an attack on all 192, except Russia, member states.
Well, Grandpa Lira here is completely losing his mind if he thinks that Gonzalo Lira was speaking the truth when the same UN is contradicting Gonzalo Lira's statement, claiming that the US is to blame for the war in Ukraine.
I'm very disappointed at the US government, and in particular, the State Department. When you read in the American embassies throughout the world, they have statements in the embassy that calls for any American citizen that could be imprisoned in a foreign nation. The embassy would come into his help at the earliest possible time. The chief of Foreign American Services in Ukraine, he told me that he had a video conference, but that video conference was almost 3 weeks after my son had been detained.
Well, we have to stop here again because it seems like Grandpa Lira here is a little bit upset that the United States is not doing much to help expedite the release of Gonzalo Lira from the Ukrainian prison. Well, what can I say? Maybe he hasn't been watching Gonzalo Lira's videos as often as he claims to do. Maybe he forgot that Gonzalo Lira himself filmed a little video expressing how he feels about Americans.
Because clearly, this whole incident was set up to pull at the heartstrings of Americans. Americans are like puppies. I mean, Johnny Depp said this years ago, and he had to walk it back and say, I respect Americans, but he was right. Americans are like puppies, okay? They're emotional, they're stupid, and they run around without any thought, any consideration as to the future. And they're pathetic. I mean, I'm just up to here with Americans of all stripes. You know, between the decadence and degeneracy, the fatness, the loser leadership that it's got. I mean, dude, you know, anybody worth anything in the United States should leave. I've said this since last October, man. The United States is toast, and all the people there, fucking losers, every single one. But they're puppies. They're puppies, just like Johnny Depp said. And they are willing to throw any kind of common sense out the window because they're dumb as puppies. That's the truth.
And well, you heard it here, folks. Why should the United States do anything for a Russian propagandist who doesn't have much respect for Ukrainian laws or Americans? As a matter of fact, Gonzalo Lira doesn't have respect even to his own followers. Why do I say these things? Well, let me tell you a little story about Gonzalo. Back in 2019, Gonzalo Lira created an Indiegogo campaign for a book he claims wanted to have released. The name of the book was Wheelchair Boulevard. The Indiegogo campaign can still be found online, even though the campaign itself is already closed. The link to the video with the pitch is no longer working since Gonzalo erased most of his videos soon after. Fortunately, the video can still be found on one of Gonzalo's side channels.
So a couple of days ago, I launched an Indiegogo campaign to support my novel, Wheelchair Boulevard. And the reception has been incredible. I mean, I cannot thank the people who've supported me enough. I mean, it's just been extraordinary. You know, I'm well on my way to my goal, and I think it's going to be a successful campaign. So thank you, one and all. A lot of people have said, well, you know, what the hell is Wheelchair Boulevard about? You know, I mean, it's got like this title that is evocative of zilch, right? What's the story? Tell us. I mean, you're supposed to be a storyteller. This is a novel. It's supposed to be an entertainment. So tell us what the entertainment is about. Fair enough. Wheelchair Boulevard is about the kidnapping of a young woman.
It happens in the first chapter. She's kidnapped by these people who are not too clever.
Well, as you can hear, the book is about a kidnapping. That is odd. The reason why this is odd to me is because it sounds similar to a previous project that Gonzalo had already created. See, Gonzalo had already made a movie called Secuestro, which translates into kidnapping. What is it about? It's a 22-year-old girl, the daughter of a millionaire businessman, is the victim of an express kidnapping from which she will only be saved if her father pays a large ransom. It sounds like Gonzalo Lira was rehearsing some of his previous stories which had already failed since this movie had a low rating score. But going back to the campaign was a success since it accumulated 143% of its intended goal, accumulating over $10,000. Needless to say, the book was never published, and Gonzalo just kept the funds and never refunded the money to his 155 backers, which some of them went as far as to pay $1,000 for his book. Special thanks, $1,000. You will be given a special thanks in all editions of the book, an audiobook, as well as a dedicated and signed copy, the limited edition hardcover of Wheelchair Boulevard, and the ebook and audiobook as well. So for $1,000, his backers will get the Wheelchair Boulevard audiobook, the Wheelchair Boulevard ebook, a limited edition hardcover, estimated shipping April 2019. And the comments tell all the story that you need to know. Started very hopeful. Nicholas Williams posted, took a little while, but I was able to unfuck my pledge. I clicked the wrong one. All fixed now. Looking forward to the hardcover coach. CRP replied, thank you, Nicholas. Looking forward to sending it to you. I'll be doing a video about the quality of the printed. Best, CRP. Later, as time passed by, Marine, 143% funding and no updates? Soon the community is going to run out of polite reminders and the CRP out of awkward excuses. It ain't as much a question of money, but a one of honor. CRP, you gave your word. Alejandro, I paid $25 and I really wanted to read this novel. I don't understand why CRP is doing this. People who bought his novel are real fans. He shouldn't let us down like this. Garrett Fontaine, this guy makes $165,000 a year from Patreon. Do you really think he has any incentives to create this book? No, this was just a grift. This man used your money to buy pots, options, contracts that is similar to shorting. After being tipped off on some insider information leaked by one of his intended clique members, Mr. Metokur. In his own words, he has made a few money from the situation. Why did he not decide to disperse this information to any of his followers? On the updates, the last update that Gonzalo made in March 28, 2021. The book hasn't come out. The release date was supposed to be April 2019. The last update was over 2 years ago, March 28, 2021. Light at the end of the tunnel? As you might know, I've been embroiled in a legal dispute with my former US publisher for the past 2 years. The publisher heard about my Indiegogo campaign and claimed that under the terms of my previous contract with them, they had the right to publish Wilshire Boulevard. I had a contract with them signed in 2002 for my previously published novel, which was ambiguous as to a subsequent novel. We have been embroiled in legal dispute ever since, but because of a change in the management, this legal dispute might finally end, and I will be able to release Wilshire Boulevard. This process has been so low going and frustrating that I've been remiss in updating this campaign. So I am doing it now, as I was reminded by a supporter of my commitment to you all. I'm sorry for this delay, but legal disputes like this tend to be endless. It's easy to throw sand in the gears, hard to remove it. If all goes well, I should be done with this issue by summer. Touch wood. Best, CRP. The book was never released.
Americans are like puppies, okay? They're emotional, they're stupid, and they run around without any thought, any consideration as to the future, and they're pathetic. I mean, I'm just up to here with Americans of all stripes. You know, between the decadence and degeneracy, the fatness, and the loser leadership that it's got. I mean, dude, you know, any.
Now, an issue that I find about this last update posted on 2021 is that he claims that he had a contract with a publisher in 2002 that prevented him from publishing any other novels. The thing is that when you Google Gonzalo Lira's name and how many books he has published, you happen to find that Gonzalo has printed books after the 2002 contract that he claims to have. His most recent book was A Secret History of the American Crash, published on February 28. It seems like he didn't have much problem publishing this book. Was it because this is not a novel? Hard to tell. But if he was able to publish this book with no problems, how come he had problems publishing that other book? But let's finish listening to a few more words from Grandpa Lira.
It has been enough blood in this world. I've seen too many battles. I've seen too many wars, Kim. And now I'm fighting for my son. This is my last battle of my life, and I can't lose it. I have to win my son back. So that's why, Kim, I appreciate this opportunity you have given me. But the world should move. My son is no delinquent. My son hasn't killed anyone. My son hasn't threatened anyone. My son has given his opinion, right or wrong. As I recall, the great philosopher, Voltaire.
Well, folks, as you can see, Grandpa Lira is a fighter. He has fought too many battles, and now he's fighting for his son. And nobody better get on his way, because this man has a record of terrorizing anyone who dares challenge him. How do I know this? Well, we can hear testimony from someone who has felt Grandpa Lira's wrath. Someone who lived in constant terror at the hands of the mighty Chilean warrior.
I know a lot about bullies. I was raised by a bully. My father, my old man, was a bully, and he bullied me, and he was a bastard. And I haven't spoken to him in 25 years because the fact of the matter is, I hate his guts. I hate his guts because he was a bully who just, let's be frank, he fucking terrorized me when I was growing up. He really scared the ever-living shit out of me just about every day. I grew up under the thumb of a bully.
And there you have it, folks. Over 25 years of not speaking to his father because he hates his guts. But if you're starting to feel sad for Gonzalo, don't worry. To end on a good note, Gonzalo is far away from his bully of a father, and it seems like he's not getting out anytime soon. According to Grandpa Lira, Gonzalo was locked away, and they seem to have forgotten everything about him. And as a quick update, it seems like Gonzalo's hearing was scheduled for the 26th of June.
Here's one news. This is last night, my daughter learned that the Chilean honorary consul in Ukraine, they do not have an embassy, they have an honorary consul, had informed that Gonzalo will stand trial next Monday, the 26th. I don't know whether to believe this information. All I can say is that if it is true, the US government will look very bad. They are not aware of this, by the way. They have done nothing to alleviate Gonzalo, like Pontius Pilate. They have just washed their hands.
And that was June the 26th. I made a quick search, and it seems like the hearing never took place, or they never bothered telling anyone about it. So all ends well. Gonzalo is locked away, far away from his bully of a father. The people he has ripped off can have a little bit of closure by seeing him behind bars, and the world is better for it. Well, that's about it, folks. Thanks again for watching all the way till the end. If you like this video, click a like, share, and subscribe. I'm a Facts Hunter. Bye for now, and take care.